everyone. Welcome. And for those of you that were attenders last year, remember that we honored the service of Doris Miller, a World War II hero who served bravely, courageously in Pearl Harbor and all over the South Pacific until he was killed in action. This year, we're going to learn about and honor another one of America's greatest generation. Shifty by Chuck Yeager, retired military general. Shifty Powers volunteered for the airborne in World War II and served with Easy Company of the 506th Parachute Infantry Regiment, part of the 101st Airborne Infantry. If you've seen the Band of Brothers on HBO or the History Channel, you know Shifty. His character appears in all 10 episodes, and Shifty himself is interviewed in several of them. I met Shifty in the Philadelphia airport several years ago. I didn't know who he was at the time. I just saw an elderly gentleman having trouble reading his ticket. I offered to help, assured him that he was at the right gate, and then I noticed the Screaming Eagle, the symbol of the 101st Airborne, on his hat. Making conversation, I asked him if he'd been in the 101st Airborne or if his son was serving. He said quietly that he had been in the 101st. I thanked him for his service, then asked him when he served and how many jumps he made. Quietly and humbly, he said, "Well, I guess I signed up in 1941 or so, and I was in until 45, at which point my heart skipped." At that point again, very humbly, he said, "I made the 5 training jumps to Toccoa, then I jumped into Normandy." Do you know where Normandy is? At this point, my heart stopped. I told him, yes, I know exactly where Normandy is, and I know what D-Day was. At that point, he quietly said, "I also made a second jump into Holland, into Arnhem." I was standing with a genuine war hero. And then I realized that it was June, just after the anniversary of D-Day. I asked Shifty if he was on his way back from France, and he said yes. And it's really sad for me these days because so few of the guys are left. And those that are, lots of them can't make the trip anymore. My heart was in my throat, and I didn't know what to say. I helped Shifty get onto the plane and then realized he was back in coach while I was sitting in first class. I sent the flight attendant back to get him and said that I wanted to switch seats. When Shifty came forward, I got up out of my seat and told him I wanted to have it. I told him I wanted him to have it and that I'd take his seat and coach. He said, "No, son, you enjoy that seat." Just knowing that there are some who still remember what we did and who still cares enough to make this old man very happy. And his eyes were filling up as he said it. And mine are brimming up now as I write this. Shifty died shortly thereafter that fighting cancer. There was no parade for Shifty, no big event in an arena, no wall-to-wall, back-to-back 24 news coverage, no weeping fans on television, and that's not right. Let's give Shifty Powers his own memorial service right here online in our own quiet way. And please forward this email to everyone you know, especially to the veterans. Rest in peace, Shifty Powers, the late Chuck Yeager, Major General. Ray Lambert was a highly decorated medic in World War II, and he wrote a memoir shortly before he died, Every Man a Hero. And I couldn't agree more with one of his quotes and thesis statement in that book. What kind of person would I be if I didn't tell their stories? And that's where we all need to be. At this time, I would like everybody to stand as our students from Pitt-Bradford, presently serving, present and post our colors. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now a moment of silence for those who made the ultimate sacrifice. Thank you. Please be seated. Welcome to our 13th Pitt-Bradford Veterans Day Honor Breakfast. I particularly welcome all of our veterans that are here. At this time, we're going to play the United States Medley of all the branches. When you hear your song, please stand so we can recognize you and your service to our great country. Thank you, Vi. I was pleased this morning to wake up from a text greeting from President Emeritus Livingston Alexander. He sends his greetings and thanks all of our veterans this morning, and he so appreciates that we're carrying on this tradition. At this time, I would like to invite up President Rick Esch, as he has a message this morning for our veterans. President Esch.
Good morning. I'm honored to be in your presence today. Each year I look forward to this special event because I want to look you all in the eye and say thank you for the service, for your service to the country, to the people in this room. This year marks two significant anniversaries. The first is the 60th anniversary of Pitt-Bradford. The second is the 50th anniversary of the withdrawal of U.S. combat troops from Vietnam in 1973. As you know, as some of you experienced during the war, thousands of young men and women were sent to other sides of the globe to fight while their families and loved ones hoped and prayed for their safe return. Those of us of a certain age were old enough to remember the turbulent time in our nation's history. Thank you, Pat. Again, those of us who are of a certain age were old enough to remember that time as a turbulent one in our nation's history and in our campus at Pitt-Bradford. And we also remember, if we were watching the black and white television, Walter Cronkite and the solemn message that he would deliver each night. And now, nearly 70 years after the start of the Vietnam War, we continue to live in turbulent times. War still rages in other parts of the world where innocent people are dying and communities are ravaged. We watch as children are pulled from wreckage and rockets leveling neighborhoods, and it leaves us fearful, uncertain, and anxious about our future. Despite our fears and uncertainty, one constant holds true. Our servicemen and women remain strong and dedicated, and when called, deployed to posts throughout the world to protect others and bring stability. They willingly make the commitment today, just as you did. I thank you for your commitment to serve our country and defend our democracy, for the sacrifices you made in doing so, for serving in places where you may have faced imminent danger, for being brave during circumstances many of us could never imagine, for taking action to protect others, whether you knew them or not, for standing tall, staying strong, and serving with dignity. Your military service and the service of all of those who served before you is the foundation on which our democracy was built. Our country is strong because of your patriotism, your willingness to put country above self, and your selfless courage when you were in harm's way, all for the common good. Your dedicated service enabled us to have the freedoms that we enjoy and hold dear, and unfortunately, sometimes take for granted. Whether you served during a time of war or peace, whether you served 50 years ago or last year, you helped preserve our very way of life. I'm proud to know you, to work with many of you, and to share this time with all of you. I also am grateful you are all here with us because, as we know, there are many, many who also served courageously, but were not as fortunate as you and never returned home. Let's remember those brave men and women this morning as we enjoy each other's company. On behalf of the faculty, staff, and students at Pitt-Bradford, please accept my sincere thank you. Not everyone can or is willing to make the kind of commitment each of you made, but we are all grateful for you. for making it. Again, thank you for your service, and thank you for being in our presence today.
Thank you, President Esch. At this time, I'd like to invite up Dr. K. James Evan, Vice President, Dean of Students Emeritus, also a veteran of the United States Air Force. He will say the blessing.
Thank you, Brett. And it's wonderful to see so many friends here today. I see, as I look around the room, veterans, active duty personnel, and ROTC cadets from both Pitt-Bradford and St. Bonaventure. Welcome, and of course, welcome to all of you who support the veterans and those in the military. It means so much to those of us who are veterans or are active duty. So thank you to President Esch, to Brett Butler certainly for organizing this for so many years, and to Met's Dining Services as well for providing this wonderful breakfast. Let us turn to God in prayer. O God, our Creator, in this season of Thanksgiving, we give you thanks that we live in a nation that was founded on the principles of liberty, justice, human rights, and the rule of law. On this Veterans Day weekend, we acknowledge and thank those who have served our country in the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, and Coast Guard, some giving the ultimate sacrifice to keep our nation and its people, as well as many others around the world, free and safe. We remember with humility, appreciation, and admiration all those who died in the defense of liberty, and we are grateful to all those who have given of their valuable time to defend our land. Be with them and their families, O God, and especially be with those who are serving in our armed forces today, both at home and abroad. We thank you for this time together, O God, for the food we are about to share, and for the blessings of liberty you have bestowed upon us. May we always heed your call to promote peace and goodwill wherever we and our nation are called to serve. Amen.
Let's enjoy breakfast. Vi, do you have any particular order you'd like us to go, or start eating and enjoying? We'll commence back in a few moments. Enjoy breakfast. Thank you, veterans. And enjoy breakfast. At this time, we are in for a treat. I'm pleased to introduce my friend and longtime colleague, Alex Nasmitz, who's Assistant Vice President and Director of Admissions here. In 2010, when we hosted our first Veterans Breakfast, he was one of the first that I consulted with, got some ideas. Alex, like myself, is the proud son of a wartime veteran, and we're going to learn a lot about another hero, his father, who served on a bomber squadron during the liberation of Europe. Alex, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Alex. Yes, thanks. Appreciate it. So, good morning, everyone. Thank you and welcome to all our veterans. Appreciate all your service. And I just want to point out a couple things before I start to present. On your table, there is a listing of my father's 33 missions. He was wounded on the 33rd mission. His squadron actually flew 35 missions. So that is on your table, so you could peruse that. Also, in the back of the room, you'll see a display, and some of the things that you'll see up here are actually part of that display. So I wanted you to kind of get the fact that anything that I say up here, I could prove. Because a lot of times you can't do that, especially for a World War II vet. So what I'd like to do today is kind of take you through just about 6 months of my dad's service. There'll be, I'm not going to go through every mission, but I've tried to pick out a couple that might stand out a little bit with a good story. My dad never really talked about this, his service, until about the mid-90s, when he became part of the Rutgers University Oral History for World War II veterans. So he's enshrined there, which is kind of cool. Brett asked me to speak, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 months ago, I think, and I actually tried to get snippets from that so I could hear his voice. Then I decided I better not. So first I'll introduce you, my dad, Alexander Nasmitz, served from the summer 1944 through March of 1945. He was part of the 8th Air Force, the 13th Combat Wing, the 350th Squadron of the 100th Heavy Bombardment Group, or the Bloody 100th. I'm not sure I'd be able to remember that. I could barely remember my address, but that's what he had to remember. So I want to introduce you to his crew, and also a diagram of a B-17 where my father served. My dad was an armorer and a left waist gunner, and you can see the position there, the bottom left on the B-17. B-17s were, they weren't necessarily that big, but they were packed full of stuff, people, places, things, bombs. So I wanted to make sure that folks understood what a left waist gunner was, and you could see it there on the bottom where he would have been positioned. This is a crew. This is actually, I believe, in South Dakota when they were training. They just picked a random B-17 and took a picture of themselves. My dad is in the lower right, the only one smiling. Not sure why he's smiling, but he is. But he's part of that crew and flew with these guys for 33 missions. It wouldn't be fair to my dad or his crew if I didn't at least show you some of the folks that served with him. Powell and Lawrence was the pilot. Powell was the co-pilot. Many of the photos that you'll see were actually taken by Powell. He had a camera up there in the cockpit and took a lot of photos. But these are some of the other folks that my dad palled around with from his crew. Rapid City, South Dakota is actually where he was training for war, maneuvers, preparation. These again are photos taken by co-pilot Powell right there. Notice the 2756 number was in the same picture as the one you just saw from my dad's crew. But some of these folks, or some of these pictures, I should say, are all part of a collection that, believe it or not, my dad had in the closet in our house in New Jersey that the co-pilot asked him to take home after his wounding, so he would be home before the co-pilot would be home. And it was the early 90s when the co-pilot's daughter found him, contacted him, and asked him, to share some stories. And my dad said, I think I have something of your dad's. And Charlene Hill Powell now has the largest private collection of photos from the war. So she's made copies of it and donated it to different museums and stuff, but she owns the largest collection. So, since this is a point of view, I'm going to read a couple things that my dad had wrote about his journey. So this is just some general information you could peruse through as I read. Assembled as a team in the summer of 1944 in Rapid City, South Dakota, Lawrence's crew of 4 officers and 6 enlisted men completed operational training and prepared to travel to a theater of war. These are all my dad's words too, because I wouldn't be speaking like this. Provided with a B-17G fresh off the Boeing assembly line, the crew spent its first night to places unknown after being issued jungle gear and stung with anti-cholera serum in Grenier Field, New Hampshire. The first leg meant a stopover in Gander, Newfoundland. Lawrence opened orders in the second leg of the journey from Newfoundland to Iceland, where we found out we were bound for England and the 8th Air Force. We landed somewhere in Wales on October 13th, 1944. It was a Friday. Immediately thereafter, we were assigned to the 13th Combat Wing. The crew traveled by rail, detraining to a town called Diss, and at last settling at our new base at Thorpe Abbotts. We learned that we were replacements that October after a costly raid in September for the 350th Squadron of the 100th Bomb Group. The enlisted crew was assigned bunks in a masonry-type barracks built by the British, with a number of other enlisted personnel, all members of flight crews. The name on the door, "Do drop in." Changes to the makeup of the crew happened almost immediately. There was an official decree of reducing enlisted gunners from 6 to 5. One enlisted man had to go. At the stage of the war, with almost all of France liberated in October 1944, there came a directive from High Command that B-17 crews could no longer support 2 waist gunners. In the event of enemy fighter attack, it was apparently reasoned that the radio man would function as the second waist gunner. Nasmyth and Caruso, left and right waist gunners respectively, were assigned to draw straws. In the presence of the entire crew, the straws elected to keep Nasmyth on the crew and reassigned Caruso. It was to pass exactly that way. Nasmyth remained with the original crew to fly with the 350th. At best memory serves, Caruso was transferred, but not known where. Lucky Nasmyths. These are a couple of pictures of my dad's B-17. He flew mostly in My Blue Heaven. My Blue Heaven is also the 4th plane in the back, taken by another pilot and another plane, but these are the planes that my dad flew in. He was also assigned to Heaven Sent, which is a little bit more popular because of the nose gear, the nose art. That's the one that I remember him telling us about, but My Blue Heaven was the one he was assigned when he first went over. On my display over there, all the letters to his sisters and his mom are all recorded and saved there, but it's kind of a nice remembrance. And I did look this stuff up, and he did say stuff like this, so please bear with me. October 23rd, 1944, a fellow comes around to do laundry with some of the boys, and he had a pack of English cigarettes. I traded him a Camel for one, just to try it out, and it was like smoking cornflakes or something. He said he paid 2 shillings and 4 pence for his pack, or about 46 cents. We only pay a nickel for ours, or 3 pence in English money. So this is a quick letter to his sister, my Aunt Olga. By the way, my dad was Ukrainian and full Ukrainian, so Olga is like, Mary in Ukraine. So he just indicated he went out and got paid about $69. He had been in England for about 2 weeks, I guess, 3 weeks. About a month in, he went on his very first mission. This picture also corresponds with the story, and the little black book that I have on the table there indicates his first mission. This was what he was not supposed to do. The rebel Nasmyth was born before me. But he kept a log of every single mission, and then he cut the article out from Stars and Stripes newspaper that actually corresponded with that particular mission. The first mission acquainted us with a flak hole in the waist floor, but no hole above, yet no evidence that the shrapnel remained on board. Once on the ground, we discovered that the object hit our aircraft at an angle so acute that When it exited the double aluminum thickness of our ship's hatchway from a standing position, the hole could not be seen. The gash in the exterior wall of the hatch was frighteningly large. We knew then, but it brought us no comfort, that flak could come at us from all directions at every conceivable angle, and not as some of us thought, just up and down and left and right. So that's his plane with the hole in the side where the flak left. I just have this up there today because it's 79 years ago today. My dad flew his second mission. Kind of cool. So the third mission, which is about a month and a half in, on the bomb run, the release mechanism failed to operate, and all 12 of the bombs remained hung up in the bomb bay. Because the group had dropped its payload over the target, the big square D left us behind, limping along across Europe with bomb bay doors open. One at a time, each of the 500-pounders was released by a screwdriver in the hands of Jay Powell, while Ray Wilson wrapped himself around Jay's legs. Remember what an open bay looked like looking down from 5 miles up? There was an inquiry, of course, as you might expect. The release mechanisms worked perfectly once the plane was set back at base. So this is a picture that the co-pilot took of the bombs being released. It's kind of crazy to think that someone had to hold somebody's legs in order for them not to fall through. The fifth mission, my dad's crew actually had a habit, I guess, of taking a picture of the crew after every mission. So I have a bunch, and I just threw one in. This happens to be the one for this mission. The mission contracted sharply with number 4 because it is memorable for its intense flak. If ever the cliche, "you could walk on it," could be applied, this was the mission. Our aircraft came through it bloodied, but nobody aboard was hurt. En route home to England, one engine was out altogether, another windmilling enough to imagine that the engine itself would break loose. Worse yet, apparently flue line transfer valves failed and the gasoline was being used up fast. Lawrence decided to land in Belgium rather than risk a ditching situation over the English Channel. After a night at a most unforgettable hotel, we were flown back to base at Thorpe Abbotts, the next day in a C-47. And again, this is a picture of the crew in Belgium after their ditch, or before their ditch. Because of that mission and what they went through and had to ditch in Belgium, my dad was awarded the Air Medal. That was sent home to one of his sisters, so she kept it for him. And then the newspaper article that my grandmother actually saved in the local newspaper. So this is a letter to his sister on December 20th, 1944. December 20th happens to be my birthday. The play Hamlet by Shakespeare was on in the evening, and I could not get a ticket through the Red Cross. They told me to go to the box office. I did and got it. The ticket was about $2.80, and the seat was a good one. U2, or about 10 rows back from the stage. The play was about 4 hours long and very good. I know the story, but seeing the play with English players and in wonderful costumes really made it superb. I do wonder how the fellow who played Hamlet managed to remember all he had to say, and he had plenty to say. This is the playbill from that night. If you look, the fellow who played Hamlet, of course, in the playbill was Sir John Gielgud. So mission number 7 was Christmas Eve. Notebook reflection, as you can see in the notebook. Flak hit us just over the lines, saw 17 go down in flames, many holes in the ship, say 40, Berg hit in the hand, target demolished. This day was Christmas Eve. Over Europe, it was clear for the first time in weeks. It had snowed. From 5 miles up, there was never a more peaceful Yuletide scene come out of Courier and Ives. Bastion was happening down below. As we crossed the lines, an echelon of 3 planes from another B-17 group slipped under us and to our left. A spectacularly beautiful sight against the snow-covered landscape. Nasmith's alerted tail gunner Korpalski to have a look. Then, 3 puffs, low, medium, high. That B-17 folded its wing as it exploded in flames and dove earthward. Meanwhile, at this point in the nose of the ship, Marvin Berg felt the need to place his hand on his chest. Zap! A small chunk of flak split his fingers, but it was stopped by the chest protector he was wearing. Keep in mind, my dad was 19 during this. A letter to, I think my aunt, yeah. A couple of the boys decided to make this a real Christmas, so they took off and chopped down one of His Majesty's evergreen trees. Actually, it is the top of the one, but it's still the same. It's really a good-looking tree. In the barracks, it stands as high as the ceiling, and we've got it decorated so that even the major, mind you, said it was the best tree in the entire area. We have silver tinsel, chafe of course, in abundance, and we made all sorts of designs from it. Candy, gum, and lemons are the only bulbs, and one of the boys made a string of flashlight bulbs for lights, and the tree was complete. Holly grows around here, so we got it all over the place. Mission 12, my dad deems as the fiercest mission. If one mission were to be selected as the fiercest encounter with the enemy, the Lawrence crew, perhaps this New Year's Eve trip to bomb submarine pens, is it. Anti-aircraft flak was heavy, but not especially accurate. The bomb run was completed satisfactorily. It was at the rally point that FWs and 109s attacked. Enemy aircraft flew right through our formation, turning symmetrical echelons into ragged, dislodged formations. Ray Wilson was credited with an aircraft destroyed, as was Levin, a substitute gunner apparently for whom no further information survives. To regroup, an aircraft triangular A on the tail moved up to fill a gap, even as square D plane moved down into the same vacant space. The topmost plane settled atop the other, almost exactly even, like maiden dragonflies. Stuck together, the planes peeled off, out of formation. 4 parachutes opened over the North Sea, but the coastline of the continent was still visible. The topmost plane was piloted by Lieutenant Rojan, whose enlisted crew were housed at the Dewdrop Inn. The plane was among 5 the 350th lost that day. The 100th lost 12. So these are some of the patches that we actually have. The patch my dad had on his uniform was the one on the left. It was only used from 1944 to 1945. And then, of course, everybody has to have an official patch, so that's it. And this is a patch. This is a patch. It is, seriously, there it is. For the 350th Squadron. So a letter from his sister. A friendly snowball fight, and I'd like it saved, please. This afternoon in the ship, we had a friendly little snowball fight with the officers. Nothing at all like the ones we used to have in the vacant lot behind the garage or by the brook. I saw some people skating on a pond in town and wondered how it would feel to get into my own skates. It's been 2 years. As I understand it, we are going on furlough on the 6th of February. We're going to get 7 days and 2 days travel time. Guess I won't see Scotland after all. At least I'll be able to celebrate my 20th birthday away from camp. I've enclosed my citation for my oak cluster. I'd like it saved, please. It was good, sister. Mine probably would have thrown it away. So these are some photos of my dad actually on furlough. His birthday is February 20th, and he had the week off, which was kind of cool. So these are some of the guys that flew with him. They were all on furlough together, some place in England. I wanted to share with you too some of the things from the Black Book. I'm not going to go through all the missions, but just some of the headlines and stars and stripes and the different missions that went on with the information that my dad had collected and saved. So mission number 33 is when my dad actually got wounded on March 14th, 1945 over Hanover, Germany. Once again, his co-pilot was like the photographer of the war, I think. That's my dad actually walking to the ambulance. And you can see my dad's position with the flak holes in the ship. This was the last combat mission for Nasmyth, who was wounded by flak just as bombs were called away for the target. The rest of the crew, from whom he was separated at this point, did fly the additional 2 missions to make the total of 35. The letter, the Western Union Gram announced to my grandmother that my dad was wounded. Pretty basic. Yeah, your kid got hurt. He'll be back in action, sooner or later. But my dad's words, this is how his mission ended. As waist gunner on mission 33, Nasmyth was obliged to handle the systematic drop of chaff carried aboard the aircraft flown by Lawrence and crew this day, March 14th, 1945. The chaff chute was positioned opposite the right waist position. In a B-17G, the waist positions were staggered. On his haunches, doing his thing, he heard Marv Berg's interim voice call, "Bombs away." He looked up and through the right waist window, seeing bombs dropping in single file order from the open bomb bays of planes in a higher echelon. He heard the boom of exploding flak and metal hitting the ship. So did Dick Korpowski, who was immediately on the intercom calling his waist gunner. When Nasmyth didn't answer, Korpowski switched channels and called a pilot. Because the microphone in his oxygen mask had become increasingly ineffective, Nasmyth elected to wear the old-fashioned throat mic. At the moment he heard "bombs away" and looked up, a piece of flak skimmed across the throat mic and was deflected by it, but not before leaving Nasmyth with a bleeding throat laceration and disconnected from his voice intercom. But he could hear the command to Radio Man Wolf to check on Alex. Nasmyth remembers momentary confusion when he used his left hand to press to talk, and the fingers came back covered with blood. He remembers not being able to understand why the throat mic on the waist floor were showing coppery springs. He did connect to the existing mic in the oxygen mask and reported in, "I'm hit." That's all he said. In fact, that was all he could say for the next several hours. Apparently, the realization of being wounded in action scaring the voice right out of him. In retrospect, it was probably because the location of the wound made it impossible for him to determine its seriousness. He couldn't see it. Bob Wolf could, and when Nasmyth observed Ruddy Bob Wolf go pale above his oxygen mask, he couldn't have hurt anymore. In fact, Nasmyth did not remember any pain at all. Marv Berg, who allegedly had some medical school training, sprinkled sulfa on the wound and gave the victim a shot of morphine and placed a bandage as appropriately as possible under the circumstances. The crew had wisely disconnected the intercom while they were administering the wound. Berg now reconnected Nasmyth and told him what it is, and he still remembered to a day a very professionally delivered medical opinion. What you have here is a superficial wound, just nicked the esophagus. Being unable to speak, Nasmyth Nasmitz's thoughts were concentrated on vocal cords. What about them? And what sort of wound could be superficial if you could actually see the esophagus? Nasmitz was comfortable on the floor of the radio cabin as the planes flew back to England. Once a reasonable safe territory, Lawrence requested permission to leave the formation. It was granted. Wolf got the sign message that Nasmitz preferred not to have red flares signaling wounded aboard, lest the ground crew panic. But he remembers seeing the flares anyway, fired by Wilson up front as they made their parabolic flight over the top of the aircraft. Medics were inside the aircraft in an instant. The doctor examined Nasmitz and said, "You were lucky, weren't you?" From outside came a voice, "Hey, Doc, you need the stretcher?" Nasmitz found his voice and responded, "Nope, I can walk." After preliminary treatment at the base dispensary, Nasmitz was transferred to the 65th General Hospital. And of course, Grandma has to get the articles in the paper. The letter written by Nasmitz to his mother on March 16th, 1945, tells of how the crew visited with him in the hospital. It does not say that Dick Korpalski came with Nasmitz's bottle of Old Granddad under his jacket. Under medication, Nasmitz declined to drink, but the guys drank it and finished it off when they came back from Mission 35. This was the last time the crew was all together. And he never drank it again. So, April 13th, 1945. Lots of 13s, lots of Friday the 13th. After more than 3 weeks in the hospital, Nasmitz landed in Chorley, his port of debarkation. It was the day after Franklin Roosevelt died, April 13th, 1945. It was a Friday. Nasmitz and Korpalski sailed back to New York on the Marine Robin. Lucky Nasmitz drew guard duty, 4 hours on, 4 hours off, all the way across the Atlantic. But a merchant seaman aboard was a high school acquaintance, so the advantages of freshwater showers and an occasional decent meal with the crew made the trip fairly cruise-like. VE Day was announced when we were mid-ocean. We docked in New York on May 13th, 1945, but it was Mother's Day, a Sunday. After my dad and all his brothers came back from the war, they had to take a picture in the yard. So this is my dad, his 3 brothers and 4 sisters, and my grandma. My grandfather actually was killed in a factory accident in 1941. So it was just as the war had started, pretty much. But anyway, this is the family. My Uncle Walter, my Uncle Joe, and my Uncle John all served at the same time. And all my aunts were part of some industrial industries that helped support the war. So, civilian Nasmitz, he was discharged in 1945, went to Rutgers College and received a degree in letters. He was in advertising pretty much on and off his entire life, with his last 30 years or so spent in New York City, commuted a couple hours each way from New Jersey. While he was working in New York City, he had the Wild Turkey account. Remember, he doesn't drink Old Granddad anymore. He married Anita Nobile, 2 sons, myself and my brother, 1 daughter and my sister. And he worked in advertising for a while and then in the real estate for just about a minute, but he hated it, so he got out. And then he worked for the Veterans Administration in Basking Ridge, New Jersey, till his death in 2002. And that's it. Thank you so much for listening to his story. Appreciate it.
Don't go anywhere. Thank you, Alex. Alex, as a token of my appreciation and all the conversations we've had, I want to present you with a gift for your dad's service. This is a vintage 1941 Zippo made out of brass. They couldn't get the normal medal because of the war effort. And I had engraved all your dad's credentials: Alexander Nasmitz, Staff Sergeant, 8th Air Force. I can't read it, but the rest of it's on there.
It's on
but it's on there.
Cool.
But I think it's fascinating that this is the 1941 made out of brass, because there just wasn't a lot of metal for the war
He used to
effort.
talk, I actually brought him to the Zippo Museum. Before he passed away, we went to the museum there, and he wouldn't leave because he remembered he had a Zippo. It was the only thing that worked up in the B-17 planes, as they were coming back, and so he enjoyed the area.
Great. Well,
So,
thank you.
Thank you very
Fascinating.
much.
Thank
Appreciate
you very
it.
much. All right, as we get ready to start wrapping things up, I'd like to invite up Ron Orris from the Blaisdell Foundation, veteran of the United States Army, Mr. Dave Skaggs from W.R. Case & Sons. They'd like to make a presentation to all of our veterans. Thank you, Ron, and thank you, Dave. Thanks, Alex.
Well, let me just get set up here first. Well, good morning, everyone. This is always an honor for me to be here, and I would like to say to all the veterans, thank you for your service. Alex's story is sort of fits in with the lighter you're going to get today. If you remember last year, I talked to you a little bit about Mr. Blaisdell giving lighters to the soldiers in the field through Ernie Powell, who was a war correspondent. Ernie was on the USS Cabot, and this was the ad that was run back during World War II, and it says there, send him a Zippo lighter, and you've got a friend for life. So after the meeting, after the breakfast last year, I thought about what could I do for this year to give you something that would sort of fit in. Now, I can't give you that lighter because it's worth about $1,000 if anybody has one. So I worked with the design studio, and we came up with this one. Now, it's a black crackle lighter, which is the same as the World War II lighter that Mr. Blaisdell gave out. And the only difference is the lighter that was given out during World War II was a steel lighter coated with what Zippo refers to as black crackle. This lighter is a little different. It's a brass lighter, and the reason we decided to go with this is where it says, thank you for your service, that's all engraved. And when they engraved it, the brass came through. So you're getting a very, very special lighter. And so myself and Dave are going to, if you'd all want to come up and line up one at a time, we'll give you your lighter.
I'll send these out.
Oh, yeah, you do that.
You got those?
And I'll show up once again, the Fifth Ward goes first.
Judge, thank you for your service.
You're a little jealous back.
Thank you for your service. No, we're good, we're good. Dave? Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hey, Mike, thank you, sir. Thank you. Thanks, Rod. You bet.
You're welcome.
Hope you like it.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you for your service.
Dave?
Hey.
Happy birthday. Thank you. Bye, Ron. Thank you, Ron. Nice, thank you. Sir? Sure.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Sir? You're welcome.
Thank you for your service.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rod. Thank you, Rod. Hey, appreciate it. You bet. Thank you. You're welcome. Is it possible for me to give Monica a coat?
Oh, my goodness, yes, absolutely.
You know Monica?
Absolutely, yeah.
How about,
Hey, don't leave. Okay. Stick around.
thank you very much.
There you go, sir. You're welcome.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
You're getting quite a collection.
I know.
Okay, now we're going to do the ROTC. I'd like to ask all the ROTC students to come up.
You have enough for the ROTC?
Yep, we're giving them this one. Isn't that nice?
Yeah, it is.
Hey, thank you for your service.
There you go, thanks.
Your lighter's a little different. You're not veterans yet.
Thank you. Oh,
Oh, wait a minute, wait a minute.
See you later.
You get a lighter.
thank you.
Uh-huh. Thank you for your service.
You're welcome.
Thank you for your service. Was there one more? I thought there were 5 of you. Oh,
There is.
somebody didn't get a lighter. He didn't come up?
Let me take it over to him.
Okay. Okay. All right. That's it. Thank you very much. Oh, you didn't get one? Okay, we're good.
We just gotta clean up our mess.
Thank you very much. As we wrap things up, I'm going to ask Abby Goss to stand up. I'm going to embarrass you. Abby's on our women's basketball team, and on Wednesday at our home game, she will be presented with her scholarship check. It'll be a nice night of pageantry and college basketball. Thank you, Abby, and congratulations. I want to thank Metz and Associates for their gracious donation for 13 straight years of this breakfast. Thank you once again to all of our veterans. We cannot say thank you enough and never pay back the debt that you've picked up the tab for. Thank you. As always, we're going to finish with the singing of God Bless America. After that, I'd like all veterans to come forward so we can get a group photo. So forgive me for pitching this. It will be awful. You guys drowned me out. You know what, Dr. Ball? I'm going to put you on the spot. You're a great singer. Would you please lead us in God Bless America? Thinking on my feet. Thank you, James.
God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, James. Picture up front, all veterans, please.